There's this weird thing that happens in boardrooms all over the world. You've got cybersecurity experts and business leaders in the same room talking about the exact same thing, risk. But it's like they're speaking two completely different languages. One side's talking tech, the other's talking business. Today, we're going to build the bridge that gets them on the same page.
In this quote, man, it just nails the frustration, doesn't it? An executive doesn't need the gory details of some specific vulnerability code. What they need to know is, how does this affect our ability to win, to hit our targets? This communication gap, that's the central problem we're here to solve.
All right, so let's break this down. What are these two languages of risk we're talking about? It's not that one side is right and the other is wrong. It's more like they're both describing the same giant elephant, but one person's describing the trunk and the other's describing the tail, and they're using totally different words to do it.
And this is where you can really see that disconnect in action. On the left, you've got the tech team's world, specific vulnerabilities, unpatched servers, phishing attacks, important stuff, for sure. But on the right, that's what the business leaders are thinking about, hitting revenue goals, protecting the brand, avoiding huge fines. The stuff on the left causes the problems on the right, but they're not speaking the same language. Our job is to build a translator.
So how do you bridge this gap? Well, it doesn't start with forcing your CEO to learn code. It starts at the very top, with leadership defining a single, clear strategy for how the entire organization is going to think about and deal with risk.
The very first piece of this strategic puzzle is something called risk appetite. Honestly, just think of this as the organization's core philosophy on risk. It's the high-level statement from senior leadership that answers a fundamental question. To achieve our goals, how much risk are we fundamentally willing to accept? It's the big, strategic guardrail for everything else. Okay, so if risk appetite is the high-level philosophy, risk tolerance is where the rubber meets the road. This is what makes that big idea practical. It takes the broad appetite statement and applies it to specific goals, asking, all right, for this particular objective, how much can we wobble off course before it's a real problem? It makes the philosophy measurable. And here's a perfect example of how these two ideas work together. Let's look at the retail firm. Their risk appetite is broad. Service disruptions must be minimized. That's the big idea. But the risk tolerance puts a number on it. Website outages lasting up to 4 hours for no more than 5% of its customers. See that? One is a feeling, a philosophy. The other is a hard, measurable target that a team can actually manage to. Okay, so we've got our strategy set from the top down. Now we have to go down into the weeds, to the system level. This is where we stop talking about philosophies and start building a structured, easy-to-understand story about what could actually go wrong.
To build a risk story that a business leader will actually listen to, you need these 4 key ingredients. This isn't just some random list of bad things. It's a logical narrative. Think of it as a recipe. Let's look at each ingredient.
First up, the asset. Simple question. What are we trying to protect? It could be your customer database, your website, or something you can't even touch, like your company's reputation. And the key here is, an asset is only as valuable as its importance to your mission. Next, the threat. Okay, so what could actually cause harm to our asset? And it's so important to think bigger than just hackers. A threat could be an employee who just makes an honest mistake. It could be a server that just dies of old age. It could even be a flood in the basement that takes out the data center. But here's the thing. A threat all by itself is usually harmless. It needs an opening. It needs a way in. And that opening is the vulnerability. It's the unpatched server. It's the employee who wasn't trained on how to spot a phishing email. It's the chink in the armor that a threat is looking for. And finally, we get to the part the boardroom actually cares about, the impact. This is the so what of the whole story. If a threat uses a vulnerability to get to our asset, what happens? Do we lose money? Do we get fined? Does our brand take a nosedive? This is the outcome, and it has to be in the language of business. Okay, so now we've built hundreds, maybe even thousands of these little risk stories at the system level, but you can't just walk into the boardroom and dump a 1,000-page report on the table. Now comes the most important part of the whole process. We have to translate all that technical detail and roll it uphill into a clear enterprise view. This diagram here really is the secret sauce. Just follow the arrows from the bottom up. We start with all those technical risk registers at the system level. That's the raw data. Then, as we move up through the organization, we start to combine them, get rid of duplicates, and, this is key, we normalize them. That's just a fancy way of saying we translate them into business terms. By the time you get to that enterprise risk profile at the top, you're not talking about servers anymore. You're talking about business impact. I absolutely love this phrase. It perfectly captures what's happening. We're taking this overwhelming fire hose of technical data that's blasting away at the bottom, and we're channeling it through a funnel until all that comes out the top is pure, actionable insight. So, after all that work, what's the end result? What does this amazing translated report actually look like? Well, let's look at a quick before and after. So this is the before. This is a typical cybersecurity risk register. And look, this thing is a beast, right? It's incredibly detailed, full of technical jargon, and it's absolutely vital for the managers running those systems. But if you're an executive trying to make a big strategic decision, this is just noise. It's information overload.
And here's the after, the enterprise risk profile. Look how clean that is. The most important thing here is that this isn't just a summary, it is a prioritized list of the biggest risks to the business, described in plain English. Now a leader can look at this and get it instantly. They understand the stakes and can make smart decisions about where to put money and people.
So let's bring it all home. We've gone from high-level strategy down into the nitty-gritty of scenarios and rolled it all the way back up to the top. Why on earth would you go through all this trouble? What's the real payoff? The payoff is that you finally create a single common language for risk that everyone in the company understands. And when that happens, everything changes. Your strategic decisions get way better because leaders are working with clear information. You stop wasting money on the wrong things and focus resources where they matter most. People know what they're responsible for, and you build a culture that's proactive, not reactive.
And that really leaves us with one final critical question that I want you to think about. In your organization, in the meetings you're in, the reports you see, is everyone speaking the same language of risk? Or are people still talking past each other? Because building that bridge, creating that common language, it isn't just a nice to have. It's a strategic imperative.